I am your host, Leisa Fox, broadcasting from the Business Record Studio on Iowa Everywhere. Today, I have got three fantastic women talking about Don't Yawn property insurance. The market has hardened, and there are all kinds of ways to mitigate those increases in premiums. And these gals are going to tell you all about it. I've got Nikki Wilcox and Sarah Allender from TrueNorth companies, and they bring in Michele Presley from Servpro. The three of them are going to give us all kinds of strategies on building relationships that will help us out of a crisis faster than any of our competitors. Ladies, welcome to the Business Record Studio at Iowa Everywhere.
Thank
you guys kind of came in from all over.
All over.
Yes.
Okay, we've got Safety Sarah.
Cedar Rapids.
And we've got Nikki Wilcox.
Cedar Rapids.
And we've got Michele Presley.
Iowa City.
Look at this. Diversity. How's it feel being surrounded by cyclone stuff?
I'm trying not to look around the room.
Well, I am super glad you're here. You are representing property insurance today. We're really going to dive deep on some solutions to those increasing premiums that people have seen. In fact, I would guarantee we've got people listening that got non-renewal notice from their carriers. And what TrueNorth and Servpro have done is partnered to really be proactive in that property insurance journey. It's so good to have you here. All right. I'm going to start with Safety Sarah. You have seen likely some horrific cases where organizations have lost their property coverage and had to pay exorbitant prices to get coverage. Talk about some of those worst case scenarios, and we'll talk about ways that we could prevent that.
I think some that come to mind, especially, I feel like derecho is kind of a time.
We all remember
right?
where we were during derecho, right?
That was one where we saw a significant amount of losses to property, and you were usually there for clients on their worst day. And so being that, right, their first call that they make, but significant, like buildings, right, destroyed. We've had some significant losses from fires that have happened. And I mean, my focus too also gets into the people and protecting employees and that part of it. So we have a exceptional claims team that helps from we get that call, right? The reactiveness part of it. But really trying to work with clients from a proactive space to help prevent those from happening.
And one of the things we talked about off air was during a derecho, for example, there were many employers impacted by that incident. If you don't have a personal relationship with those crisis mitigators and people like you, Michele, you were last man to get service. Talk about how an organization should work toward creating that relationship so that they're higher up on that response time.
Yeah, so I'll take that one just because we're the ones responding, right? So having a relationship is incredibly valuable because, again, it's human nature, especially here in the Midwest, that we help our friends, right? So having a relationship ahead of time by knowing who to contact, how to contact them, is really important. Because, for example, in the derecho, cell phone service was dropped across the entirety of for sure, the Lynn County area. And so when you have large manufacturers impacted and they have a lot of people in those facilities and a lot of property damage and they can't get a hold of anybody because they don't now have a working phone, it's really important to have backups. So by having a relationship, you'll have somebody's direct cell phone. You'll have somebody's email. You'll have somebody's office phone number, a landline still. But now we're all switching to voice over IP phone systems, which is all running through the internet.
Right.
Right. So when you lose power, It comes down to how can I get a message out? So for us in that situation, we had hospitals, manufacturing, TV stations, hotels, hospitality, food, restaurant industry, all banks, all contacting and saying, hey, I've got part of my roof off, I've got my facility wet, I've got to, we've got to prioritize those things. Well, by having a relationship ahead of time, we know what's expected of that facility and what area of that building is their most impacted and the most important in that building. For example, it could be a server room, or it could be, where guests enter, or maybe it's an ER or something like that. It's hard to say, right? So it is incredibly important to have those relationships ahead of time. So when a disaster happens, you have a plan.
Wow.
Because people don't plan for the unexpected. So being those stakeholders of your facility, you're not only protecting your facility, you're protecting your financial investment, you're protecting your customer base, and you're protecting your employees' health and safety.
Amen. And Nikki, you came in and offered a quote that I will never forget in my life. She looked at me. Well, you offer the quote because it is so good.
All right, Lisa, if you could predict that you would not have a claim in the next 12 months, how much insurance would you buy?
Zero.
That's the thing. That's what we love telling our clients is you would buy zero. You only should have insurance for the catastrophic events that would bankrupt your company. So what TrueNorth really helps you do is, instead of insurance being just check the box, purchase need exercise, let's get strategic. What can we control that maybe we put some loss control around it, some preventative measures, so we can buy less insurance in that space and invest more in the loss and safety on those areas that we have control over. We don't have control over derecho, but we do have control if possibly a fire starts, because an area that Michelle, will talk about why cleanliness is so important. This wasn't kept clean, there was grease back there. We can help prevent those things. So therefore, hopefully your premiums don't keep going up because we can buy less insurance over time because we're putting more control in other places.
There are many resources available, not only from the carrier, the agent, and TrueNorth is even going a step further. They've got a partnership with Servpro. And you do preemptive or proactive loss control visits for those clients, correct? Talk about how that works, how frequently you recommend that happen, and some of the things that you've caught that could have been catastrophic.
So one of the things that kind of comes to mind was a client where we had gone out and done just a initial hazard assessment with them and identified some issues from a housekeeping standpoint, which also, they had some really expensive equipment within the building, and how do we best protect that? So we'll talk about preventative maintenance programs with equipment, and worked with Servpro from a just deep clean housekeeping, getting them on track, and then how can we use Servpro from a preventative maintenance too? So just scheduling out regular routine cleanings to help their employees, right, focus on the day-to-day operation of the equipment.
Awesome. And that also goes a long way to build their relationship with you. Mm-hmm. So you know where all of those hidden issues are, and you can get straight to them when you come back after an accident. Talk about some of the most catastrophic things that you've prevented.
Yeah. So, for example, when loss control comes out and they're helping you identify those items, then they'll say, okay, hey, maybe our building structure needs to be cleaned. Maybe we have, grease built up on the framework. Maybe we have dust that has developed over time. And maybe we're a food manufacturing facility. We've done multiple of those. So one instance was the facility was covered in a heavy grease substance. So they've identified that, hey, there's risk in that in a loss control side. So they're saying, hey, you should really bring somebody in to clean the building. That project was pretty extensive, but the nice thing about it is we work with that team to not disturb manufacturing. Ooh. So we don't have to shut the building down. We don't have to stop the line. We don't have to stop manufacturing. We'll work with your production operations team to figure out how do we still get the project done, but yet facilitate cleaning the structure for safety.
Wow.
And And then also we've had situations where, like, another one was a bakery situation. They had a roof they were replacing from a massive hail damage. And so, for example, we're looking at the loss control of, they don't want to lose revenue. The insurance side is like, hey,
Right.
why this project is happening. We don't want to pay for lost revenue. So as the roof is being replaced, there is a membrane that's placed underneath of that to catch any debris from banging and replacement and pulling, structural material off and replacing it. So then when that membrane is replaced, we've come in on several, or not replaced, but removed. We come in to clean up as that removal occurs. So then that way you're preventing any cross-contamination to your food product.
And what I love about what you're doing, because you do sort of live in this industrial world, you also know the experts to bring in for the various issues, because I'm sure you're uncovering things that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
And going, who do I even call to help with this?
Yeah, so indoor environmental health professionals, IEPs, are really important when doing that. We even identified in one manufacturing facility listeria. I believe that's what it's called. Bad
Ew,
stuff.
it sounds really bad.
It's bad stuff. And again, it's in a food manufacturing facility. So again, we're coming in and we're not only now taking care of debris cleanup, but we're also taking care of disinfecting and sanitizing above and beyond what their janitorial team will do.
Wow.
So yeah, everybody from the roofers to the, safety fencing companies, generators, all of it. We have strategic relationships. So just like we have a strategic relationship with them on the carrier side, we have a strategic relationship with our vendors to help move that project along as fast and as possible, but also with
And
the
again,
right
it's
pieces in place.
priority, right?
Yes.
Like you're paying for priority.
Yep.
Let's talk about the value of the carrier. So we've got these property premiums that are just going up and going up and going up. There is probably a temptation to self-insure, because it gets to the point where it's so astronomical that they're like, I'll just build it myself if something happens. And number two, the other option is going to a carrier that doesn't provide near the level of service or coverage that they've gotten in the past. Do you have any words of warning there on either self-insurance or going to a less reputable carrier?
So when it comes to the self-insurance, you only want to do that if it will not bankrupt you. So that's what we always ask the clients.
That would
if-
be bad.
Yeah, if your roof blew off in the derecho tomorrow, would that bankrupt your company? If the answer is yes, then we have to get insurance to cover the roof. That's just the way it is. Insurance is there to help your company, keep moving forward when catastrophe strikes. When it comes to the carriers, you get what you pay for. You have to look at the fine print on what is excluded. That's the big thing, is I'll have lots of, clients be like, oh yeah, that's covered, that's covered, that's covered. But when we get to the exclusion page, because the contract is 100 pages long. They're not reading it.
Right.
A lot of these things are excluded. And so I don't have to be the bad guy. I'm like, did you know that this was in your policy? They said I had
That
no
conversation
idea.
has to suck.
And that's not fun. So that is where I feel TrueNorth does a phenomenal job, because we have fantastic relationships with our carriers. And so kind of like what Michelle was saying, relationships are key. We can call the carrier, get to, a higher level leadership to have this discussion of, hey, this is our client. This is what they need. We can fight for them, instead of just sending, their application through the mass system and they just look, the underwriter's just looking at XYZ. We purposely go to certain markets that are good for manufacturers, food processors, whichever, and we fight for those clients, and then even say, hey, this client's doing loss control. They have a meeting set up with Servpro. They're doing all these things to be proactive. Carriers like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing that stuff on the back end, they know that you are going to be a great client of theirs. So that's what we really try and teach a lot of our clients.
Michelle, you've been on the back end of several huge catastrophes. I had Jason Andringa with Vermeer in the studio about a year and a half ago to talk about that miracle mile where that tornado just completely obliterated a huge path through Vermeer. They had, I think it was 500 guests on premise that day. by the grace of God, they had been doing drills over and over again with their staff in case something happened. And no one perished that day, which in itself is a miracle. I happened to be driving through Pella during the aftermath and seeing those cars turned over. Where do you even begin the cleanup process?
Yeah, so it is one of the things is you've got to get with your stakeholders at the property, and you need to identify, this is one of those kind of pre-planning things, in the event of a disaster, who is the main point of contact? Because when you have a lot of stakeholders all having an investment in the operation of that facility, who is in charge?
And my
ultimately,
favorite saying
right?
is, if everyone's accountable, no one's accountable.
Correct.
So know who that one person is.
So the first thing we do is we try to develop a communication plan with the person on site. Again, it is best to figure some of this out ahead of the disaster. And we had a long-standing relationship with Vermeer. And so we actually did help them there. And so what we did was you come in, you establish what the priorities are, and then you have to start figuring out, for where do the employees go to work? Where do the employees, you're talking about not
First,
only
it's
the structure.
identifying where all the employees are.
Correct.
Because I know they went a good 24 hours without having them all accounted for.
Yeah. So there's
terrible.
It is. It's chaos. It is mass chaos. So there's a period of figuring out the chaos, and then there's a period of figuring out the plan and then executing on the plan. And so it's having that relationship and having that communication. Then from there, it's go in and get to work. And once you've established that plan, you can execute. Whether you need, it's a small disaster or something like Vermeer, where you have to bring in 30 additional staff overnight and say, let's get to work. We got a lot of glass to clean up. We got a lot of structural material. We got to make this safe again.
Safety, Sarah. When it comes to a loss like this, I'm always curious where, let's say, for example, all of the employees' cars. So this is an act of God. Who pays for the employees' cars that were in the lot? Do we know the answer to that? Is it the carrier? I don't know. That's so interesting.
So I cannot speak for that particular instance, but I can speak from what I know from dealing with, let's say, for example, other businesses. And I'm going to take this one just from when we go on site. We don't only just have, so think about this. We have the cars in the parking lot. We have employees who, just like this often, the space that we're in, we have NBA Jam behind us, right? Somebody brought that in, right?
Right.
Somebody brought that into this facility. So using that as an example, my office is filled with all my wonderful things I like to be surrounded with during my day.
Right.
If you think about your employees and their cubicles of contents that they own, you think about the contents that the company owns. There are multiple center of influences with multiple insurance policies with items in that structure.
Yikes.
So a lot of times when it comes to the vehicles on the exterior of the building, if the company doesn't own the vehicle,
right,
then that is on the person who owned that car, who drove it to work that day, right? Or the person who was visiting that site when the tornado hit. That car is going through their insurance.
Okay.
And then again, but Servpro doesn't determine coverage.
Right.
I'm just speaking from what has occurred previously, on sites. And same thing, when you have contents, people's personal belongings, they'll say to their employer, well, who pays for my stuff? So that, again, there's some stuff there that has to be figured out.
Establish that up front.
Yeah, establishing that up front is really important. And you can kind of talk through your policy.
This is the exclusion page. Yeah. that I was talking about. That, yes, I mean, some carriers will, and some carriers will say, nope, sorry, that wasn't on your schedule. That wasn't a vehicle listed. So it really depends on your policy. And that's why it's so crucial to have a relationship with your broker. If you only see them once a year at renewal time, not good. Because these are things you need to constantly have discussions over. We meet with all of our clients quarterly to have these discussions like, hey, this isn't covered. You still good with that? Yep, we're golden. We have a plan if something happens. You just want to keep sure that those conversations are top of mind. So when a catastrophe happens, kind of like Michele said, you're in chaos mode, and our brains don't always think logically. we need to remember some of the conversations that we had prior so that you know what the carrier is and is not responsible for.
Safety, Sarah. Go through the loss control process with me as it pertains to property, okay? So do you have your own loss control at TrueNorth that you will go in and actually go through that process with the customer?
We have our own loss control team that will go through and perform risk assessments with clients to look from a property standpoint, looking at fire protection systems, housekeeping, emergency action plans, and business continuity, and if they are actually doing drills on those. But then there is also the carrier side of loss control. So usually before renewal, or if you are a prospect for them, they will perform a loss control survey. And that's very much could be a determination through underwriting if they will cover you or if it'll lead to recommendations.
Okay.
And so we try with clients to get them in the mindset that let us do it, right? And we can work together to solve the problems and make the connections, right? Before it's carrier loss control that may come through.
Got it. So we're sitting in November. A lot of renewals happen around the first of the year. Is there time to get a quote before the end of the year, or is that a 3-month process? I would imagine if it is a complex risk, it's going to take a hot minute.
That, again, it depends. I've done them in as quick as 48 hours.
Hello.
Again, but that happened so quick because of the relationship that we had.
Okay.
That current now client, was just it was a bad situation, not us, but we came in at the last second, and he had a deadline because especially with businesses, you have contracts, you have a lot of things going on, sometimes city funding, federal laws that need to have, whatever covered. So we had a 7/1 deadline, and he met with us. He had June 28th, I think it was, and we got it covered. Typically, 90 days is the perfect window, but 60 is no problem.
Okay.
And weirdly enough, a lot of property renews on 7/1. That's a really
Interesting.
hot. Yeah, 4/1 and
All right.
7/1 are really popular ones. But we always say 90 days out is what carriers like, but 60 days that's no problem.
Adequate. Very good. Sarah, if you think back over the denials that you've gotten from carriers on properties, what would you say are the most common reasons for denying a risk?
So if I speak from what I see with loss control recommendations, fire systems, sprinkler systems, a big one, especially given like the amount of combustibles within a building,
Okay.
is probably one of the biggest ones.
And that's going to be a pretty decent capital investment to get that rectified.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How much time do they give you?
Usually when you're responding to one, you might get 30 or 60 days.
Ouch.
And so we'll get involved with clients to help. Like, we know we're not upgrading a sprinkler system in 60 days, but what are the steps that we can put in place and that good faith effort of coming to meet that recommendation.
Got
and
it.
it also helps having those relationships that we have with carriers and knowing we can call the underwriters and have those conversations and being able to, we want what's best for the client too.
Right. Michele, how do you, in times of crisis, spread yourself out so you're helping as many people as possible? Because I'm sure there are times when things are so escalated. It's like, how do I get to everybody?
That is one nice thing about the Servpro system. So internally, their Servpros are franchisable. And so, like, for example, we have our office in Iowa City, in Des Moines, in Ottumwa, and down in Missouri. So we have the means to be able to pull staff. Let's say a derecho happens again in our area in Iowa. Okay, I can pull staff from my internal team from Missouri to come up and respond and spread out. Also, we have strategic relationships with labor pool companies that are already vetted, because that's a big deal in the system, is to have those relationships with those vendors to make sure that we're getting vetted staff, right? To bring in and to assist. The other thing with the Servpro system is we can bring in resources from around the country to then work under us. So for example, like out of the derecho, we had 40 different Servpro ownership groups all come to Cedar Rapids to produce and help our friends and that we had built relationships with. So the call comes to me. I then and our team. If we can't get there personally, I'm then communicating and we're dispatching another team. All of the standards for that particular facility are communicated from our team to that team so that you get a seamless relationship. So we can take our team of 85 that are physically underneath my payroll. I can then strategically use 64,000 employees in the Servpro system.
What a great service that is.
Yeah, having that national partnership and having that is really, really important because the difference is in Servpro, you can be as big or small as you want to be. Same thing in manufacturing, right? You can, if you want a $2 million revenue and you want 10 employees, you can have that. Or if you want a $1 billion revenue and 3,000 employees, you can have that as well. It's the same thing in the Servpro system. So what we do is we connect the right Servpro to produce for the right size of project. So like, for example, if I need a team that's 300 employees out of, let's say, Chicago, I can facilitate that, or Denver. Or if maybe I just need a small local team to do like a small bank facility, I can facilitate that too, with just a few and get the right team to produce the right size project.
So cool.
That's where we handle that.
Awesome.
Yep.
I want to get into the changes in the industry. Little known fact, I sold property casualty insurance for about 6 years back in the day for Lemaire Mulat Condon. Lemaire Mulat Condon was a locally owned agency, Iowa owned, not anymore. There are probably a dozen other locally owned agencies that have been swallowed up by large conglomerates. Talk about TrueNorth, its commitment to staying independent, and why that is important for Iowa manufacturers to know.
I do love this topic because you are absolutely correct. We're seeing it in the healthcare too. A lot of the private medical practices are getting swallowed up by the big hospital system. Same thing with insurance. Our owners have committed that we are not for sale. They say that every single day, every single meeting, that we are not for sale. And it's because you can lose that personal touch. You can lose the relationship when you get swallowed up by a bigger entity. Do they have more resources? Yes. It's like a yes and, but then if you need assistance, your account manager might be in Chicago, New York City, New Orleans, who knows where they're at, and then you just get too big because some of these companies are writing massive and massive and massive accounts, so your quality and service goes down. If a catastrophe happens, you may be calling a 1-800 number instead of calling your broker's cell phone number. Things are just a little bit different.
They're not going to come help bail water out of your basement, right, in the middle of the night if they're in Tampa, Florida.
Correct. And and that's what people are like, the big, huge companies. TrueNorth, we are, again, privately owned, over 100 million in revenue. We're one of 7 in the nation that is still privately owned over 100 million. And it's because we don't have to answer to a boardroom where, there's shareholders who, are buying another yacht with this year's revenue.
Right.
All of our owners are employees at TrueNorth. We see them every single day. If I need to have a tough decision to make, I can call Jason Smith right now and say, hey, what's going on? That's harder when you're at those big conglomerate carrier or insurance brokers.
That's exactly right. And I think the level of service too, when you know your clients, means a lot.
Well, and when you know that a catastrophe happened, again, with the derecho, we were all living it as well. And so our urgency was way higher. We're calling the carriers like, this is bad. We need to get on this ASAP. If your person's out of New York or again, out of Los Angeles, they're just, oh yeah, it's all in the news. Yep. Okay, here's our claims department. That service and sense of urgency just doesn't exist.
And Lane Danielson is a good friend of mine. Hello, Lane. And you guys have a significant presence here in the Des Moines Metro. Where else do you have locations?
So Cedar Rapids is our headquarters. And then we have Des Moines, Denver, and Chicago.
Nice.
So we kind of say the whole little I-80.
Well, and
spread.
it's sort of that Midwestern,
yes,
which matches your values and your sense of integrity. So
yes,
that's
we're very
cool.
strategic on where we go next.
Awesome.
So those are our 4 places.
And talk about, Michele, Servpro and your footprint. Where do you have boots on the ground?
So my direct boots on the ground is in Iowa City, Ottumwa, Pella, and then Des Moines. Also Columbia, Missouri, Marshall, Sedalia, Missouri, and Lake of the Ozarks. So for any of you Iowa people who love to go to the lake 5 hours away, we got you covered. You're using the same team from Iowa City and Des Moines as you're using at your condo at the lake.
And that's an interesting fact to bring up. You do personal
Yes.
mitigation as well.
Yep. So in the derecho, I had a bank facility that we do all of their locations in 16 states. So he'll call me, whether it's in Wisconsin, whether it's in Minnesota, whether it's in their location in Florida, he'll call me directly. He called me with his own house.
And you know what? I'm thinking about those poor Floridians who keep losing all their stuff.
Yep, we've
and how
done it.
hard it is for them to get service. They get access to you in Florida, I'm sure.
Correct. Yep. So when you have multiple locations like that, it works out really well. We do that with college facilities, manufacturing, hospitality, multi-locations. Our team handles it across the country for them. We strategically find the right team to take care of them. They don't have to know 64,000 Servpro employees, 2,200 locations. They just need to know me. They need to know Team Meyer, Iowa City, Des Moines, their local friend, their local contact, and we can get them resources
I love
anywhere.
it. And plug your phone number. I'm getting your phone number, by the way.
Yeah,
before
yeah,
we
and
leave
I'll make
today.
sure
Your
you
cell
have it.
phone number. All right. Any parting words for the audience? What I'm hearing is take a proactive role with your property coverage. Make sure you've got all things clean and tidy and in order. Again, that relationship with a locally owned agent that is there for you no matter what is super, super critical. What am I missing?
I would say also, just to reiterate, don't treat purchasing insurance as a check the box. Take that seriously, be strategic about it, get other leaders involved, and really develop a plan where you have control and start acting more like an insurance carrier instead of just, yeah, here, take my money. Let's be more strategic about your insurance plan.
And I'm going to use another Nikkiism.
Okay. Hey,
Control the controllable.
Yes.
I've got two of those so far.
I have control issues. Can you tell? Yes. Control the controllables.
I love it. Thanks, ladies, so much for being in the studio today. And I will have all of your contact information in the show notes so people can reach out.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks.